Hi, I'm Keita St. Cyr, and you're watching the Oddworld Danger Show's newest segment,
Burlesquers in Bed with Beverages.
In this segment, I'll chat with my friends from across the worlds of burlesque. Later tonight, we'll be meeting Burlesque star Twinky Boots. But first, she's an MC, singer, burlesque artist, sideshow performer, and the creator of Smoke Show Cabaret. Coming to us all the way from New Orleans, Louisiana, it's Betsy Propane. We've got a great episode ahead, so let's go to bed. Hi, Betsy Propane.
Hi, Keita St. Cyr.
So, we're both in our animal print. We're living our Tiger King best lives.
Oh my god.
Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm. Can I just say, it's not fair that Carol Baskins gets to be the leopard print. Like, we've all been working on that wardrobe for years.
Right?
So how dare she?
Yeah, if burlesque has one guiding theme, it's that we all believe that leopard print's a neutral.
I do like that she can, like, ride her bike and videotape at the same time, though. It's pretty impressive to me.
Oh my gosh, we need to mount a selfie stick to your bike.
You have to see what I did to my trike. I did some cool decorating.
Is it there? Can you show us?
You want to see it? It has red petals.
I love the stripes.
I'm gonna add a red cup holder.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. And bring it back. I'm having some trouble here.
Alright, we're here with Betsy Propane, sponsored by La Croix. So you started out in Long Island doing burlesque and singing in a rockabilly band, and you really helped build out the scene out there while also performing in 5 boroughs. Which came first for you? Was it burlesque or was it music?
I started out doing music first. I actually got like my first gig at one of my rockabilly shows that my band performed in before I was even in that band. I wasn't even in that band yet. They had just asked me to like come up and do a number, which I don't think anybody realized like how much work really goes into putting together a burlesque routine, which it does. And down to the costume, the makeup, everything, the choreography, the story. So I started out singing in this band after I did this like routine with a couple of other performers that I still am friends with in New York. And I stripped out of a regular dress that was not like a strippable burlesque costume. And I ended up going on to sing in that band for like 3 or 4 years. And then I started performing burlesque around the same time that me and that band took off. So I was doing music gigs and burlesque gigs at the same time, and it got really overwhelming. And then I eventually didn't do the band anymore and moved to Brooklyn from Long Island after producing out there for a couple years. And that's where it all kind of took off. And once I moved to Brooklyn, I spent more time in Coney Island, so that was really fun.
Yeah, when I think of you as a performer, I think of Coney Island, and the way that you integrate sideshow and burlesque is a very Coney Island thing. What's your favorite sideshow skill?
I like escape acts. I really love inverted straitjacket routines. I think they're the most suspenseful. One time I saw someone do the water torture cell from that Harry Houdini did. I think fire is beautiful. I think it's the most connecting, like you connect your body with like an outside element, and I think that's beautiful when people can be really comfortable with fire.
Who are some of your influences as a performer?
Of course, Lucille Ball, of course, Carol Burnett, and I've been really into Mrs. Maisel lately. I've watched the season like 2 or 3 times. I think it's all about like delivery and wit and face. The ability to just like be a beautiful, graceful woman, but also not care about being silly and ridiculous, and not being afraid to like literally fall on the ground if you need to be funny. And and yeah, I mean, there's tons of neo-burlesque performers that are super influential to me. I would say Dirty Martini, Shelley Watson, Bambi the Mermaid, Legs Malone.
What's your favorite of your acts?
I love my straitjacket act. I've never seen anybody sing while they escape a straitjacket. It feels unique to me. It feels very tailor-made for my personality on stage. I love being able to sing and like do something that I feel really powerful in, and have that like, is she gonna make it vibe coming out on the other side for the audience. So
it is a really unique act, and you're such a well-rounded performer because you do a little bit of everything. You sing, you MC, you do burlesque, and you do sideshow. Which of those is your favorite, or do you have a favorite of those?
I'd say if there was like a pyramid, it's singing, burlesque, and sideshow, just because I feel like I have so much to learn in sideshow still, which it's a lifelong skill that we learn and work hard for. I feel like burlesque ties in with my adoration for Hollywood glamour in the 40s and the whole pinup style, and then singing is just, it feeds my soul. I've been a singer since I was a wee Betsy.
You've been uploading videos of you singing lately, right?
Yeah.
And I know you're doing Gorilla Go-Go.
Yeah, every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern time, I dance in the backyard in New Orleans with my big pink non-binary friend Bubbles the gorilla. It's Bubbles. That's just something I do for me, and if people want to tip, that's cool. I just thought it was a fun idea to dance around the yard to music I like.
How are you finding the process of being creative during quarantine? Does it feel like pressure? Does it feel worthwhile?
You know, it's a couple of friends and I were talking about it because we're writing sketch comedy to put on Facebook Live, and it's really hard to perform for this square. It's really impersonal, and as performers, we thrive off of audience participation or encouragement in our acts. And I was talking to another friend about like how we perform for the audience, and how without the audience, I would always say, without the audience, our show would be nothing. And now we're living in this world where our audience is the internet, and it's hard to just like dance for your phone. But as long as you're creating something and you're sharing it, it doesn't have to be like perfectly edited. It doesn't have to be production value to the nines. As long as you're creating something, and it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be a new act. It doesn't have to be this like masterpiece. It's just showing that you're keeping your wheels turning.
So walk us through your process a little bit. What comes first for you? Do you find a song that you're inspired by and then develop an act around that? Or are you usually inspired by a costume and work the opposite direction?
Well, I don't think I've ever created an act in the same format. I think sometimes I've had like a dress that was really beautiful. Like I wore this beautiful midnight blue gown to my father's wedding. He married his second wife, and I didn't want to get rid of the dress, and it fit me so well that I just made it into a burlesque costume and found like matching gloves and the headdress, and that was kind of like, I want to make a costume based around looking like a giant peppermint, and that became my holiday act. And then I found the music around it and then choreographed it to my own personality. And then I've had ideas for costumes that I've had costumers make for me. I'm not the greatest with the sewing machine, and I like to employ my talented costumer friends when I'm able. And then sometimes I'm like, gosh, this is such a good song. Like, wouldn't it be great? So like, I'm pretty much voguing to every song that I feel rhythmically inclined to. So sometimes a burlesque routine is born from it. So there's never a linear process, but I try to stick to like one hard thing that drives me to create a routine. Everything has a storyline that works hard in my head before I put it on stage. So.
Is there a genre of music that typically inspires you more than others?
I would say blues and surf rock. I try to find like songs that are unique, but sometimes the surf rock is just so good. You know, surf rock is such an important part of my life, and not just because of rockabilly culture and Americana, but I like to work to surf rock. It's feel good, you know.
You mentioned earlier that you're writing. What are you writing?
I've been studying some caricature archetypes lately, and I've been trying to write some sketch comedy because oh my god, there's a fly.
Is that a butterfly?
I've been trying to write some jokes. I've been feeling funny. And there's
Awesome.
funny things going on in my brain, so I'm trying to really like write them down and like been inspired by Miss Maisel hardcore lately and her wit, and just I feel like that makes a really great femc, makes a really good hostess on stage. So the day comes that I get to host a show down here in New Orleans, I have some material that I don't just feel like a deer in headlights about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're a funny lady. That makes sense. That works for you.
Thank you. It's nice to hear someone say that, because I always feel really funny in my own head, and then it's nice to know that I make other people laugh. So
You do. What's your favorite thing about living in New Orleans?
well, this weather, for instance, is fantastic.
I'm so jealous. It's been raining nonstop here.
I know, we were almost begging for it to rain.
Oh.
Which sounds really silly to say, but I love all the space that I have. I love the sunshine. I love that every little thing is art.
Zeppelis or beignets?
I'd have to say I love the aesthetic of eating beignets in like a beautiful French-inspired Cafe du Monde or in City Park. But Zeppelis, because they remind me of my dad. But the one thing they have in common is I always wear black when I eat them. So I'm covered in powdered sugar either way. Damned if I do, damned if I don't.
Okay, you can choose any movie, keep one actor, replace all the others with Muppets. What's the movie and who do you keep?
First movie that comes to mind is Breakfast at Tiffany's, and that party scene in the apartment, and that all being just like drunk and Audrey Hepburn being the human. It seems hilarious to me. Right? Just like drunk Muppets, like doing their thing, lighting each other's hats on fire, and
I'm with it. I think that's great.
yeah.
I love
There
it.
we go.
Anything else you want to tell the audience?
Well, when quarantine is over, I hope that we can continue Smoke Show at the Beauty Bar in New York. Please follow Smoke Show Cabaret on Instagram. Please follow myself and Miss Keita Saints here and figure out what we got going on in the next couple months. And just keep following my Instagram. I'm building this wonderful, beautiful new life in New Orleans, and I hope to collaborate with a bunch of new fun performers and artists real soon. Watch Gorilla Go-Go, it's funny.
Thank you so much for chatting
Thank
with
you,
me.
it was wonderful talking to you.
I'll see you soon.
You'll see sights and sounds to fill your cup. Don't be shy, step right up to the art world.
My next guest is an internationally acclaimed burlesque performer and producer of Members Only Burlesque. It's Twinky Boots.
Hi.
How you doing?
Great.
How are you holding up in all of this?
Well, it's been a thing for sure, because what is this now? Like, I don't even know what day specifically this is of like
feel like
isolation.
it's got to be day 40 something, right?
Right. I'm like, I started self-isolating like March 13th, or like after I got home from work, March 12th. I was supposed to do 4 festivals between the end of March and the end of May, and all of them have either been canceled or postponed.
What festivals were you going to do?
I was supposed to do Richmond at the end of March, then Seattle Burlesque in April, and then I was competing in Spectacular Cabaret Festival in Portugal, and then Vienna Burlesque at the end of May. So I was like, cute. Oh, nope, just kidding.
Oh, that's such a bummer. I hear really good things about Vienna.
I love it. That is the festival that I love going back to always. They postponed until September. So I was like, actually, I'm kind of excited to go to Vienna in September, because I've only ever been when it's like super hot. So
You've been doing big things in the world of burlesque.
have I?
Well, you're the Glam Award winner for Best Burlesque 2 years in a row.
I was completely shocked both times that I won. Especially the first time when I won, it was a year that everyone was just like, the same person has won this for the past like however many years. There's no chance it's going to be someone new. So everyone's just like, we're just going to dress up and have fun and be there. And then when they announced me, I was like, they mean that? They meant that. Oh my God, they meant that. And then I ran to the stage because they were like, I don't think he's here. Okay. And I'm like, no, I'm here. And
I
then
was just in complete disbelief, but I'm here.
I know. I was completely confused, and I was at the back of the room and nobody would get out of my way. It was a lot. But then this year when I won, I was totally convinced that a different person who was sitting at my table was going to win. So I was like, just there. I'm like, okay, it's cool, it's fine. That they announced me, and I was like, again, complete shock. So I was like, all right, I guess people enjoy what I do. So great.
People do enjoy what you do. The first time I saw you was at the Nerdlesque Festival in Coney Island.
Mm-hmm.
And after you got off stage, everybody was like, like
They're like,
what
I
just
don't know what
happened?
I just
Who is
saw.
that?
I don't know who this brand new person is, but great. I wore this actually in honor of us because this is from the Philadelphia Burlesque Festival,
I know,
which
I
was the
remember.
first time we shared a dressing room together.
Yeah. I hope that they bring that festival back. I know that they're
I do
on
too.
like
I know they're on a
extended hiatus,
hiatus, but
yeah.
I hope they bring that one back because it was a good one.
So you got into burlesque through Broadway Bares, right?
So when I was in college, I stumbled upon a video, I think on like Playbill or Broadway World or something, that was like a recap of Broadway Bares. And I was like, what is this thing? And it was like the 10th year or 10th version of it or something like that. And I told myself after watching it, I said, if I ever move to New York, because I grew up in Kentucky, so I never had any aspiration or thought that I would actually move to New York. So I said, if I ever end up in New York, I'm doing this. Like, I don't know how I have to get involved or how I'm doing it, but I'm doing it because this is the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. And so I moved here almost 10 years ago. Actually, no, I just passed my 10 year because it was April. So when I moved here, I was like, okay, how do I get involved with this? And it took me a while to like kind of find my in. But then 6 years ago, I was in my first, I helped out with like, they used to do winter solo strips. So they would do like the big show in the summer, and then they would do a smaller one, like a smaller fundraiser in the winter. And I was asked to be a rotation dancer, which is essentially just a flashy way of saying go-go dancer for the end of show for that. And after I did it, Jerry Mitchell was like, why haven't you done the real show? And I was like, I don't know how to get involved. And so he told me the information that I needed to do and when to submit it. And then the next year I was in the show. So I was like, that was so super easy. I don't get why it took me so long to get involved, but I'm glad I'm involved. And so now I've danced in it the past 6 years. And from that, I met my business partner, who also had been dancing in it. This would mark his 10th year doing the show if we end up having it this year. But Milo Pony and I met through that, and then he kind of got me introduced into solo burlesque and was like, "Oh, I'm part of a boylesque group, and we have a show next month." And I was like, "Sure, I'll come. Why not?" And I went, and my friend that I went with was like, "Why aren't you doing this?" And I said, "Why aren't I?" And then I messaged the owners of that company that night, met with them 2 days later, and by next month's show, I was in it. So I was like, we're just jumping in full force.
You have one of the best names in burlesque, by the way.
Thank you. I was having difficulty like trying to figure out what my name was going to be. And so Sloppy and Jackie Nova were in an email thread with me and a couple of the other boys that were in the group that were basically like tossing out ideas of how to create my name. And so Jackie was like, well, what are you most known for? Or like, what are the things that you kind of bring to the table? Or like, what's something that you can't live without? Or blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, well, I'm known for always showing up with coffee so for like almost a half second, my name was almost Cafe Olay. And then Sloppy came up with the idea because I was like, and people can never guess my name or like my age because I'm just perpetually young looking to them. It was like, what about something with like Twink in it or Twinkie or blah, blah. And I was like, that could be fun. That could be fun. And so he came up with the idea of Twinky Boots by incorporating my history with Broadway Bares, because Jerry Mitchell was the director, producer of Kinky Boots on Broadway. And so he was like, well, why don't we take like a Broadway show and like make it some kind of double entendre, like throw in Twink into it or like whatever. So we were like tossing around and he came up with Twinky Boots. And I was like, 1 second, pulled out my phone, looked to see if it existed, if anyone else was named that. Nothing, nowhere. And I was like, how is that possible that there is not a drag queen or another burlesque performer somewhere in the world or anyone with this name? And so I immediately snatched it on all social media platforms that were possible and just said, done, done, done.
That's amazing. It's such a good name. It is mind-blowing that it hasn't already been scooped up
I
by someone
know.
else.
I was like, because I started doing solo burlesque about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. And at the time, Kinky Boots had been on Broadway for like 3 years at that point. So I was like, really? How? Wow. Okay. Well, good job, Sloppy Chulo. Good job.
And boots are kind of like your thing.
I didn't initially intend for that to be my thing. When I started, it was just kind of like, this is the name, is just Twinky Boots because it's a play on Kinky Boots. And then when I started conceptualizing numbers, I started to notice that I was always ending my numbers in footwear, or like that was the through line for all of my numbers, was that I always ended with something on my feet.
Did
Like,
I see that you were
guess that's what it
teaching
is.
a like walking in heels class?
I teach a lot with the group Les Femmes Fatales. They have had me teach, I've taught Twerking with Twinkie, Heels for Queens, which is my crash course in confidence in heels for performers and anyone in general who's just wanting to feel more comfortable in heels, because most burlesque performers are always in heels. They don't like to do, it's not as quote unquote sexy to be in flats. So a lot of performers will put them on, but they're not necessarily the most confident in them. So they'll have them on to start the number and then immediately take them off if they're going to dance in them. So I wanted to be able to, since I do feel confident in heels, I wanted to teach my tricks to people so that they could feel confident to keep their shoes on if they want to.
Do you find that your history with Broadway Bares informs a lot of the work that you're doing in the world of burlesque?
Yes. One of the things, so when I first started in solo burlesque, I started with a group called Bad Apple Burlesque, and one of the owners, whenever we would talk about concepts for numbers, he was like, it can be a great dance number, that's awesome, but if it doesn't have a story behind it, then I don't care. If there's no reason for why you are this character that's decided that they're going to start taking things off for showing more of themselves, then who cares? Like, you could be beautiful and gorgeous and whatnot, but that's just not what I want to put on stage. As far as like, that's what he said to me. I think that's really influenced the style of numbers that I do, because I try to find some kind of story to go along with a lot of my numbers. But then there's some numbers that I'm just like, I just want to feel glamorous and just pretty. So I was like, I want to dance and I want to like find ways in the music and the musicality of the song to take things off. And so that's what I do.
Tell me a little bit about Members Only Burlesque.
Members Only Burlesque is the brainchild of my business partner, Milo Pony, and I. We both met doing Broadway Bares, but then we were both in Bad Apple Burlesque. We wanted to create a new outlet for performers in New York, specifically because a lot of the burlesque world is very driven around the female burlesquers. We wanted to have an outlet for our male burlesque friends to be able to have a show to showcase their talents and then maybe be booked in other burlesque shows. And I met the owners of Spin Cycle NYC, who book in a lot of the shows at the Laurie Beachman, and they were like, we would love to have a male burlesque show at the Beachman. And I said, I can make that happen. What's your time frame? When do you want it? And they were like, why don't we say early spring next year? And I said, okay. So this was in 2018 that I met with them. So March of 2019, Members Only Burlesque had its first show. We had already decided that we were going to be a group prior to that, but we were just like, now we have our deadline of when we have to have a show ready. It's been incredibly fulfilling, actually, having our own company, because our show was nominated for a Broadway World Award for Best Burlesque Cabaret. We've been featured in Time Out and all these other different, like, Manhattan-based theater district show magazines, because we happen to have a show that's right in the heart of Times Square. So
how are we living the dream right now?
Right. We were like, I don't get it. Like, how did this happen? Like, we feel incredibly blessed that it happened the way that it did, but it's just like, it's crazy. And we've been able to bring in friends of mine and friends of Milo's that are from all over the world. Like, we had Tom Harlow in from Scotland last year. We had Faggoty Randy from Seattle. We've had the boys of Austin from Austin, Texas. And like, we've had all of these incredible performers that have been able to grace our stage. And we've also, our only thing with our show at the Beachman is that we want our performers to be male presenting. So we've been able to bring in some of our burlesque friends that also have a drag king persona that can come and do their numbers with us. So it's like, we've been really excited about the fact that we've been able to have a queer presenting show in the heart of Manhattan.
So last question for you. Do you have any advice for anybody who's trying to get into the world of burlesque or independent New York performance art?
Use your resources. That is the most important thing. We don't do auditions specifically for our group. There are some groups that do, but we want to showcase people who feel confident and are ready to grace a stage. So if you have an idea and you have a concept that you are able to do a costume with and have music for and whatnot, film it, send it to us. If we think it's ready, we'll put it right on the stage. If we think it needs a little tweaking, we'll give you feedback, but we're still going to give you the opportunity to perform. So you just need to find someone that is willing to take the chance on you.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Of course. Mwah. It was so good to see you.
Good to see you. Stay safe in all this.
I'm trying.
If you were entertained by that, make sure to hit like and subscribe and tune in each week for new episodes of Oddworld Danger Show. We're practically dying to show it to you. Until then, stay weird, internet.